Thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to talk today a little bit about mytaxi and how we make cities a little bit of a better place to live in. And there's two fundamental core beliefs that drives us. One is that we want to make relationships, interpersonal relationships, more meaningful for people in everyday life. And that in a world which is seeing more and more conflict and disengagement, we want to bring people together. That's the first fundamental belief. The second is that technology enables us to make transport much, much more efficient and affordable and environmentally friendly for everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about both. I'll start with meaningful relationships. And a little story that happened to me around 4 years ago in Italy. We were just launching Italy, so everything was new, and we flew in a Spanish driver to Italy for him to present mytaxi and how it changed his life and how it changed his job towards all the soon-to-be Italian taxi drivers. It was a great event, really, really successful. We loved it. And by chance, him and me were actually going together to the airport, sharing a taxi. And we're going, and with great conversation, and suddenly I realized, oh, we're going to be late for the flight. And told him, okay, good thing that we actually both have carry-on luggage. And we don't have to check in or anything, we can go straight to security. And then he turns around and goes like, no, I don't have carry-on luggage. And I go, well, it's right there, I can see it. And he said, yeah, well, it's not actually mine. A couple of days ago, he was in Barcelona driving one of his regular passengers and was telling her how excited he was to go to Milan for mytaxi. But he was slightly worried that, because he didn't know what kind of ticket we've booked him on, if he was able to carry his big family suitcase to get all his stuff to Milan. And he was just a little bit worried about it. They had a conversation about it. Then a couple of days later, he picks her up again, and he gets out of the car, picks up her suitcase, and it's empty. And he goes, okay, what's going on? And she's, well, we're not heading to the airport. This is for you. So you don't have to worry about your trip to Milan. And if you think about it, that's quite a powerful message, because what had happened here, from a purely transactional relationship, somebody gets into a taxi, it drives them from A to B, and then he just gives that person money and leaves. It actually became a story of two people caring for each other and talking to each other. And one person feeling comfortable enough to share their fears, while the other person actually cared about it and found a solution. And I think that's really, really strong. And let me talk a little bit about how we got there. Let's call her Fernanda, the businesswoman, traveling with taxis all the time, doesn't have her own car, always a little bit annoyed by, handling all the receipts. And even though Barcelona has a great fleet of taxi drivers, every once in a while, you get one who doesn't provide the service you want or who isn't as reliable as you need him to be. So then came in mytaxi. It solved all the expense problems by making everything digital, but it also allowed quality control in the fleet. But thirdly, what had happened in this situation was, at mytaxi, when you rate a driver with 5 stars, you can actually make him your favorite driver, and then he's preferred in all your future trips. So what happened to Fernanda was she actually built up a fleet of drivers that she trusted and liked for them to drive her around Barcelona, making it not a completely encounter between two random strangers, but for her actually to know the people who drove her around. Same for Rafa. Rafa is an amazing guy. He's incredibly service-oriented. He's incredibly reliable. Just to give you an example, in the summer month, when it's really, really hot in Barcelona, whenever he doesn't have a passenger, he takes the water, puts it in front of the AC, turns up the AC completely, freezes, just so the next customer who comes in can get a cold water. And not only that, he's incredibly reliable. Whenever I take him to the airport, he gets really, really worried, much more worried than I am, about me getting my flight. And until mytaxi came, that really didn't make a big difference. Yes, he would get a little bit more tip once in a while, but he couldn't really differentiate his business because he would have random people coming in and out, and you couldn't really build a really reliable customer base. These days, he has more than 1,000 regular passengers who voted him their favorite driver, which means he's completely booked out. He always on pre-books because everybody wants to go with him. That's the one thing. He makes 40% more revenue. But the other thing is, he actually knows the people he's driving around. And he starts off the conversation where they left it the last time the person went out of the cab. So I think, again, that really, really made a big, big difference to his life, where suddenly, yes, he makes more money, but also he's around people he knows and he cares about. So I think that's just one example of how we make relationships more meaningful and add value to the lives of the people who use us. So that's the basic mytaxi functionality, right? About bringing people from A to B. But when we thought, okay, how can we do this a little bit better? And we came up with mytaxi Match, which allows two random strangers to say if they want to go into the same direction or at the same time, they can both use mytaxi Match and they'll be matched and can go together, share the price. We came up with that idea beginning of last year, made the concept, developed it, and then actually decided for the first city to launch it to be Warsaw. There was a couple of reasons for that. First of all, from the user demographics, it looked like young people, high smartphone penetration, really, really mobile payment oriented. We thought, okay, that works. Warsaw was a huge success for us, so we have a high density of requests, which you need, because you need people to stand next to each other or in the area for it to work. And we also talked to our drivers, who really understood the competitive advantage they have by getting longer tours and sharing people. And when we launched it, we actually found out two things. First of all, we found a completely new customer segment. Young people who were now actually getting access to taxis, which were more affordable for them to use, which they wouldn't have. So it was great to see people being able to use taxis, which they couldn't have before. And the other one was a bit of a surprise to us, but a positive surprise, was that we found that people actually started using it for commuting. So in the morning times, in rush hour, rather than driving themselves, they rather use a mytaxi, share it with somebody, and then go into the city, because it's more affordable and easier to use than just driving in heavy traffic. And I think that's a great, great outcome, because what it means is we're making transportation more efficient, and we're actually reducing congestion and pollution. And I think that's just another example of how technology can really enhance people's lives and make cities work much, much smoother than before. But at the same time, it also links back to the stories of interpersonal relationships, right? So when we started doing it, we started receiving emails where people just told us, small stories about what happened to them in a mytaxi Match. And it was fascinating to see what kind of stories we got. And it starts with, as cheesy as it sounds, two people meeting there and starting a relationship. Or going to another story was where two people started talking, and actually someone got a job interview out of it. And he didn't get the job in the end, but at least he got the opportunity to get a job. And I think, again, that's fascinating to see how if you bring two people together, you can actually make a meaningful difference to their life. So all in all, as I said earlier, I think mytaxi is all about making cities a better place to live in. And I think we've been quite successful in changing quite transactional interactions into relationships that mean something, and at the same time making transportation much, much easier and more efficient than it was before. So yeah, that was a little bit of mytaxi. Thank you very much.